Hello, everybody. Recording live from somewhere.
Welcome everybody back to the Pursuit Pod. Of course, I'm your host, Calvin Lymper. Today we are repping the Tiger newspaper here at Clemson University. Just thank you to my sports editor, Ethan, for giving me this shirt if he's watching today. Big shout out to him for being my mentor. Just a random shout out to start out the episode. It's been a crazy week of sports recently. Winter Olympics are still going on, so we'll have some hockey discussion as well. But, I mean, it's All-Star break, Olympic break in hockey. Baseball isn't really starting up just yet. So, and it's past Super Bowl. So we're kind of at this, the cross point in sports where, NBA, NHL action hasn't really began right back up yet, so not a lot on the plate, but there are some intriguing stories to cover, so let's dive right into it with the Roundball Rock section. So first of all, the two biggest stories for the pod this week would start out with the KD burner situation, and this is, it's not confirmed to be him. I don't know if it is him, but it is something. The fact that no one's kind of batting an eye that this could be something that he's doing is just absurd to me. So there's some funny stuff in this mix of kind of harsh messages. There's the stuff about Jabari Smith being the R word and how that guy just doesn't even know what he's doing. KD's alleged burner also said that he misses Ben Simmons because at least Ben Simmons would pass him the ball. Saying different things about James Harden just being a weird guy, talking about how Kyrie acts like he's above everyone. My favorite thing that he sent was I think it was the Olympic film room, or maybe it was just from back in the Warriors, but he was talking about how whenever they would be in the film room watching film, when he was on Steph Curry's team, they would have I guess he was criticizing him whenever Steph had like bad things going on in film, whenever he missed, a shot, whenever he missed defensive matchups, whenever those kind of things happen. And basically KD was trying to say that Steph is absolutely untouchable in the NBA world. And like there was a picture that he sent that was like some dude like kind of looking like all like that, and saying that that's what people would look like at him like when he would say something about Steph during film. So I think that was pretty funny. It almost kind of gives us an inside look onto just the NBA world. But I just keep thinking like Kevin Durant has just been showing his fragility, especially if this burner situation is true, and will end up being a confirmed thing if it does. And I mean, I don't know, there's just parts of it that makes me lose respect for him, because I kind of got around to liking KD a lot after he left the Warriors, because I kind of realized, he is a great scorer. He's probably the most pure scorer in NBA history. He's one of the most ethical players in NBA history, but his off-court antics are just absurd. I mean, one, he definitely does bash teammates, players, especially if this burner incident is true. But the thing is, he's had burners before, so even if it's not true, he has a history of bashing his coaches, has a history of bashing his just different players that are and his teammates and everything. Talked bad about Russ when he left the Thunder. And I mean, he talked about his son's teammates. He said that, I think one of the quotes was, it's Book's team when we win and it's my team when we lose, that kind of deal. It's just absurd to think that. And this guy has a history of having ego. It shows that, again, even if these are false rumors, even if this whole thing is kind of staged and it's not a true thing, just the fact that this is something that's not out of the ordinary for Kevin Durant, especially with just, again, he's one of my favorite players ever. I would say that, especially after he left the Warriors. But you kind of see the difference between him and guys like Devin Booker. And this is probably the thing that kind of struck me the most about this whole situation, that him calling out Devin Booker in these supposed tweets and these supposed DMs the fact is Devin Booker's been on the Suns for his whole career so far, and they've been at the bottom of the valley. They've been to the top of the mountaintop so far. Didn't win the title, but got pretty dang close. So I almost feel like just the dichotomy between Kevin Durant and Devin Booker kind of says the whole thing. Kevin Durant is a guy who, if you don't win in 2 years, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go somewhere else. He doesn't ride with the franchise, let it develop. Even in Golden State, the moment things even got a little shaky there is when he was like, all right, I'm going to go to Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, when James Harden wanted to leave and then, Kyrie was suspended and all that, Kevin Durant was like, all right, I'm going to leave. Then he goes to, the Suns. And again, same thing. They're okay. They bring in Bradley Beal. They're bringing all these stars for Kevin Durant. They're trying to keep this whole super team thing going. That goes south. He's like, I'm out. Goes to the Rockets. They're doing fine, but he has teammates that aren't really playing along to his standards. He might as well go out then. And it's kind of just crazy to think that him, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, those guys just have such different career paths, which is crazy because these are guys that you thought were going to stay with their franchises for the rest of their career. For Harden, he went to the Rockets. It really seemed like, again, Rockets Harden is probably my favorite player ever. If I had to pick a specific era, that Rockets with 2018 Rockets with him and Chris Paul, 2019 with him and Westbrook, those are my favorite years of basketball. Just watching Harden and just everything he was chucking up was going in. That kind of stuff was just so insane to see. But he was on the Rockets for a while. And you're like, all right, he's probably going to stay with the Rockets. Why would he leave? And he was pretty loyal to the Rockets. There was always a talk of he's going to go somewhere else. But he got his payday from the Rockets. He got an MVP with the Rockets. Why would he go away from the Rockets? KD, you kind of thought all right, he left the Thunder. He might just stay with the Warriors because it kind of seemed like that. It seemed like they were going to, I honestly think if he stayed, they were going to win another championship altogether. I think that, 2022 championship was going to happen in 2020 or in 2021 if he stayed. So there's that, and it's just KD will leave anytime there's a chance. James Harden is an unabashed lack of loyalty guy nowadays. He literally said that he doesn't care. He doesn't think that people should focus on loyalty. He doesn't think that. He thinks it's whatever makes you money. But it's just him. He jumps ships even worse and more than KD. And it's just crazy to see these guys kind of become journeymen in their career. And then for Russell Westbrook, I still think that he should have just stayed on the Thunder, or at least just, the moment he left the Rockets, you could tell that he was just trying to vie for getting his chip. He already proved himself to be one of the greatest point guards of all time. I love Russell Westbrook. I'll always stand for Russell Westbrook. But, he jumped ship from Oklahoma City just to go to the Rockets, team up with James Harden, try to figure out the whole situation there. But that's the thing. It's just now you see Russell Westbrook. He's a guy that, I guess the biggest comparison between them is that KD, Harden, they have to be the system. When they go in, they have to be the system. I get the whole thing about James Harden, that he isn't this huge scorer anymore. He's more of a pass-first guy. He's actually playing point guard ball now. But Russell Westbrook, that's a guy who he realized that he wasn't going to be the star after Oklahoma City. He realizes that him being the star on any team isn't going to lead to winning basketball because of how versatile his play is. He really does everything on the stat sheet, but he's a guard, so he needs his big, and his bigs needs to be fed and everything. So he goes to the Rockets and he plays, the team basketball he's supposed to play with Harden. He sets up his whole thing on setting up his teammates. He goes to the Wizards. He plays the most underrated period of basketball ever seen, in my opinion. And I know he's kind of acting as a star there, but he focused on being the team. Goes to the Lakers, and the Lakers have the worst fans in the NBA. They boot him out of town just because he had a few bad misses overall. But he was molding himself into that team, but it just didn't work. Goes to the Clippers, and he's just an aggressive guy. He's doing everything for them. Just that first playoff game with them was just nuts. I remember he literally clinched the win for them in that game one. In that, I don't know how many years he was on the Clippers, and I forget who they played, but I just remember that one series. I want to say it wasn't the Rockets. I'll have to look into that, but I'm sorry for not being so well researched on that, but I just remember he was such a big part of the Clippers team for that year or two that he was on there, and then he gets shifted away. Now he's on the Kings. And I know the Kings are just crap, but the Kings, like, he's playing amazing numbers because he wants to mold into that team. He kind of figured out that he has to be the star because that team is just so weirdly set up and they're just not good. And I don't even know if you can fix Sacramento Kings. But he goes in there and he at first tried to play team basketball, and eventually he's like, all right, I might as well step up and be the star here. Now he's the star night to night. That's Russell Westbrook. That's the difference between James Harden, KD, and Russell Westbrook. You have two guys who want to be the main star. Everything has to revolve around them. The moment something goes bad, they leave. Russ, he fits in with the system. He's going to ride with that team until they decide to get rid of him. That's a team player right there. Russ is a guy that you want on your team just because he's going to fit into that mold. Even if he's not as good as he used to be on the Thunder. It's just, I feel like this whole burner situation really just proves the point between Russ and then like guys like Harden and KD. And again, I love all three of those players. I think they're all great players, but I definitely respect Russ the most out of those three just because I know that he's willing to change his mold and just fit in wherever he can, wherever is going to get him a contract, wherever is going to get him a roster spot. He's a dog. Russell Westbrook's a dog, and Kevin Durant just continues to have this fragile ego that just keeps honestly imploding somehow, even after the Warriors championship days. It's just absurd. And I think the fact that he even left the Warriors in the first place is a big example of that. But I digress. And I kind of went on a whole tangent about that. I'm sorry, but lastly, I want to talk about, for the NBA, the whole idea of removing the draft because of Adam Silver's whole gung-ho, we're going to get rid of tanking. We need, we have to make this fair for everyone. That's the draft. The draft promotes fairness, competitiveness. The bad teams get the next up. It's a revolving door of talent. And then there's this idea of removing the draft that Adam Silver said, hey, drastic measure, we might have to do it. And Ben Golliver tried to say that, he tried to spin this as a betting thing. He said that the focus on punishing teams focus on punishing teams with tanking, like for tanking, was because of betting companies. He said, quote, over-unders are at stake, player props are at stake. If coaches are just willy-nilly not playing guys the entire game, they're not letting people know in advance that they plan to do that. You're going to have a lot of angry gamblers and a lot of angry gambling companies. Remove just the gambling thing, because already that's BS. And again, if Adam Silver he may be, just knowing that he likes his advertisements and all that and the money. But just even looking past the whole betting thing, think about Mark Cuban probably said it best. He talked about the fans that go in that don't make a lot of money. They barely get enough to treat themselves to an NBA game every now and then. They want to buy their kids a jersey. And it doesn't matter who's on that jersey. It's just those kind of things. Like, you want to play for the people that are spending their money to go see you. And that's why load management, I know the 65 game rule kind of has been starting to make it go away. But overall, it's still an issue. And I don't like tanking. I think it's a thing that just happens in sports overall. And it is unethical. And just it isn't. But I think there's more things to worry about for the NBA. But now going back to this prospect of removing the draft, let's talk about just the different ways that we could get around this. Removing the draft could be a good thing. I've heard this argument be said by some pretty smart people, some pretty smart former players, talking about removing the draft and why it could be good. To start out, teams are more incentivized to make themselves a marketable location to gain attraction. Because, free agents aren't going to be going to Charlotte. Free agents aren't going to be going to Sacramento. They're going to want to go to LA, Miami, those kind of places, Golden State even. You want to be a marketable location. This is going to make those lower market teams want to invest in themselves, invest in their image. Like the Light the Beam era of Sacramento, you want to be in Sacramento. You need things like that. You need the fan support. You need people to tell you there's a reason why you want to go to that location. It could also be good because there is still a salary cap. It's not going to be like baseball where the Dodgers come in, they swoop in every top prospect. They swoop in every top free agent. I know there's a restructuring thing and luxury tax, but there's still a salary cap. So you might see like the Lakers pick up one of the better draft picks, but overall, there's not going to be one team that swoops in and takes everybody because, I mean, again, there might be just an oligarchy of teams that will come in and take those best like draft free agents. But overall, it'll be those teams. I mean, I guess that's still the question though, that there's going to be teams on the bottom, again, like the Sacramentos, the Hornets, I don't even know where else would be like a bad spot to go to, but like the Brooklyns of the world, those teams are going to be left out of that oligarchy. So that's a reason why it could be bad, even with the salary cap in mind. The other options that people have been talking about were, I saw on a Reddit post, someone said, take the last 3 years average in your ranking, like an NBA total ranking, and that determines your draft odds, which people said that like this will lead to actual bad teams getting well-deserved picks, and it will de-incentivize doing like tanking in the moment. But at the same time, there are definitely teams that are going to go all in and go 3 years tanking. And also just that idea, I'm not sure how it works, because I feel like wouldn't just a bad team have like that pick for like 3 years in a row? They would have like a top pick like that 3 years in a row overall. That's like the year-to-year approach is much better in my opinion. Someone said getting rid of protections on draft picks, which I feel like makes sense. Like, again, the Pacers-Clippers trade we just saw recently. There's that like weird top 1 through 4 and then 10 through 30 like clause, and it's just so weird. Another thing that I would be supportive of is getting rid of the play-in. I really thought the play-in was a temporary thing. I thought the play-in was just for the year of COVID, year after COVID, but it's literally, I just don't think you need it. I think if you're a number 8 seed, you should be a number 8 seed. If you're a number 7 seed, you should be a number 7 seed. That's how it should be. You're fighting for those last 2 spots, not physically fighting for those last 2 spots, and you could be like a 35-win team that somehow gets into the playoffs because you had a fluke game, those kind of deal. Then the last thing that someone said about this, the kind of approach that you could take with removing tanking, would be the women's hockey approach. Once you're eliminated from the playoffs, another standings table is introduced where you get points for wins and losses, just like hockey. And so the team with the most points will get the number 1 pick, which I guess that makes teams still want to try hard. But again, there's just teams that are just straight bad. Like there's teams that tank, and then there's teams that they have a hard schedule. They just are bad overall. Like they can just have years where they're not good. And I get there is the idea of like, oh, they're tanking it. But at the same time, it's like, wouldn't it just be the best? Well, I guess the one thing about that approach is that what would be like the criteria to be in that standings? I know it's once you're eliminated from the playoffs, but would you be added to it? Like, so like the teams that get eliminated right at the very end of the season, I guess they wouldn't really count for the standings, or they would only have like a game or two to be counting for the standings, which I guess means that the teams that have the most points will be the ones that are on the bottom in the end of the day. But I think there's some more research to be done on that. To close out this NBA subject, Mark Cuban, again, mentioned his quote earlier, but he really said it best when he said that the NBA should really focus on fan experience. They shouldn't care about tanking right now because it's for the fans. Overall, the NBA plays for the fans. The games are for the fans. They said that they should make it more affordable and increase the quality of game presentation, which makes sense because, again, I talked to you earlier about like the poor NBA fans who maybe don't get to go to games, or that they want to buy their kid a jersey, but they're very expensive. Make those jerseys, make those presentation, make the game more affordable for everyone to watch. And I think that you're going to get a lot more fans. You're going to get a lot more investment overall. So kind of going out of that and going into our 4th and 4 segment. Again, not a lot of news just because after the Super Bowl, but free agency is coming up, and we're going to be covering that a little more as, after any trades happen after the franchise tag thing goes on and after leading up to the draft and all that too. But to start out, Tyreek Hill was released from the Dolphins, and he had a disgusting injury, maybe one of the worst injuries of all time in any sport. It was just absolutely crazy. Just the way that he was smiling and on the cart ride back to the locker room. I almost feel like, can he ever even recover from that? This move saves the Dolphins $23 million in cap space for 2026. They also got rid of Bradley Chubb. So who knows what they're gearing up for? They might be going all in on some top draft picks because, we're going to get into the Dolphins a little later when I talk about other subjects, but Tyreek Hill, he's had various incidents in his past and police run-ins. My question is, he has his ring. He's done a lot. He's always been known as an elite wide receiver. He's 30-something. Is this the time to just retire? That injury, who knows if he's even going to be good after. Like I said, can he even recover from that injury? He's tied to the Chiefs just because of their history, and maybe tied to the Chargers under McDaniel as the offensive coordinator. But watch out for the Tennessee Titans, who might swoop in to take him. They have Robert Saleh as head coach, Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator. Not to mention, the promising quarterback and Cam Ward. Could this end up being another worst to first situation like the Patriots? That's the question on the books right now, and Tyreek Hill, his free agency will definitely be a big story just because of his name, but I almost wonder if he's even going to have those numbers once again when it's all said and done. Now, the second big news that, again, has been going on for a while is Kyler Murray, one of my personal favorite players in the league, but he's probably going to be the big-name quarterback move this offseason. It seems like his days with Arizona are officially over, and so these are the places that he's tied to. Mainly it starts out with the Vikings rumor, which is like any quarterback available is going to be tied to the Vikings. You team up anyone with Justin Jefferson, any competent quarterback. You look back to 2021, 2020, where Kyler was with DeAndre Hopkins and elite receivers, and you just see that, Kyler can do it when he has the team around him, when he has the coaching around him. So, not to mention that J.J. McCarthy sucks. I've said he's one of the worst NFL quarterbacks I've seen play, but he's a young quarterback. I think the team should focus more on developing their QBs, or at least maybe just have him sit behind a veteran. So I feel like, Murray, if he goes to Minnesota, he'll have the flexibility to allow that offense some breathing room. He won't have to worry about an insane fight to win every game, because the Cardinals last year, or this most recent year, literally all their losses were on a one-score game. So with the Vikings defense being one of the top ones in the league, I think they'll have a much easier time actually leading to wins here. So, and just talking about other landing spots, talked about the Dolphins. They actually have playoff appearances recently. They aren't washed. It's just coaching staff stuff. Tua's kind of needs a fresh start. I think that you can even do a swap for Kyler and Tua, give both those players fresh starts. Then you got Kyler will be teamed up with Bobby Slowick, which could be very special. Kyler could also go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were great under similar play style by Justin Fields, so you know that kind of QB archetype can work in Pittsburgh. I still don't get why they benched Justin Fields. He was really good in Pittsburgh in that brief time that he was a starter for them. McCarthy can definitely design an offense for Kyler, and ultimately this could be a team that tries to get rid of the gunslinging quarterback tradition and instead opt into a new style of NFL play and a new style of actually trying to see what you can do with the more just modern play, I guess. Moving on from Aaron Rodgers, I think that it could be something beneficial for them. Lastly, Kyler Murray could also be linked to the Atlanta Falcons, which, they're not, again, talking about developing quarterbacks. I think that you could bench Penix, put him behind Murray, at least have Murray in as a rental for the rest of his contract, just to be as a more reliable and veteran player for this talent offense right now that just needs that QB play. I just think that the Falcons they haven't really been impressed by Penix, but I think that they should definitely keep him on the bench, keep him as the QB2 to see what the deal is with him, to see if they can get him developed. So I think that would be very interesting to see, especially if I think that the Falcons would be a very interesting wild card spot for Kyler to end up landing. And I know that people keep saying that he might end up on the Colts just because, Daniel Jones is probably going to be a top QB free agent this year. And especially with Daniel Jones not even, he had his ACL tear at the very end of the year. Who knows if he's even going to play next season or if he'll play at the end of the season. You're going to need a quarterback for the time being. And I don't know if they're going to just draft another one, if they're just going to roll with Anthony Richardson. So I think that even taking Kyler for Indianapolis would be a really good deal for them as well. So moving on now to my stick on the ice. Of course, we got to talk the Olympics. Olympic Games are going on right now. I'm going to check the scores of them real quick, but I know this morning that Slovakia took down Germany. So, and Czechia is up 2-1 versus Canada. So we might be seeing an upset. That's live information. Czechia's up 2-1 versus Canada. Wow. Okay. So upset watch there, but the first to fall are Germany, Denmark, France, Italy, and Latvia. And actually, we have a pretty interesting game later today, which will probably be going on when I post this, is between Sweden and U.S. Sweden and the U.S., both guys that were, they're fighting for that gold medal with Canada. First off, Canada might go down, apparently. And second off, we might be seeing, Sweden, U.S., two teams that were basically guaranteed to get a medal in just the power rankings beforehand, but one of them is not going to get a medal, even be in contest for a medal. So it's been shaping up to be a very, very interesting tournament in the knockout stage. I mean, Canada, besides being down 2-1 right now as we speak, they look dirty. McDavid is just the best player in all of hockey, and this tournament is just proving it. He has 9 points in the Olympic Games so far. The Mac Mick line looks so phenomenal. The defense is just impeccable. The goaltending has been very better than expected. Binnington, he has a .950 save percentage. Even had a shutout against their toughest group opponent in Czechia. Supposedly not anymore. And they have a massive plus 17 point differential in this tournament. So tournament might be over before we even begin with Canada. But again, live notes, live information. Canada's down 2-1 at the end of the first period. We might be seeing an upset, which would be amazing, which would be crazy. Maybe one of the biggest upsets in all of sports history with how loaded this Canada team is. So the U.S. looks pretty great as well. Their first period is usually sloppy in the group stage play, but they still control play in that period. Hellebuck has a .952 save percentage with only one goal allowed on average. It's been overall a group effort by the U.S. Patriots here, but Austin Matthew, of course, leads the way with 5 points with the C on his chest. How about Finland edging out Sweden? So again, I said the gold to bronze was going to be Canada, U.S., Sweden. And now we have Sweden's probably going to get knocked out by the U.S. today. How about Finland edging out Sweden? Finland's had a very balanced scoring attack. They've boasted an amazing goal differential to clinch a bye for the first round. They got rid of that early Slovakia loss to open the tournament. Saros has been just amazing with a .946 save percentage. And they're really riding good momentum, but they might be a write-in for bronze, at least just for that game, just because they're inevitably going to be running into Canada, or maybe inevitably going to be running into Slovakia. So, I mean, literally all my notes that I wrote for this episode might be ruined just because of this game right now. And just to add on to that, Slovakia, they might end up being the biggest surprise in the tournament. They took the quarterfinal bye over Sweden, which I mentioned before. Finland and Slovakia both over Sweden. Slavkovsky is maybe the best player in this tournament besides McDavid right now. He's putting his country on his back. 3 goals and 3 assists. And their momentum has stalled in recent play, and they got the early win over Finland, but they ended up losing to Sweden. But with Slavkovsky on top of his game, and now they might be taking down the Giants, who knows what happens in the rest of the tournament. Sweden might be the biggest upset potential for Team USA or Canada on paper, but overall they've underperformed. They have 2 good choices on net, but neither have really impressed so far for the Swedes. Only Elias Pettersson has been impressive in scoring. Overall, especially in this game against US later on today, they need a big wake-up call if they want to still compete for that medal. Switzerland suffered a huge loss with the Kevin Fiala injury, but Timo Meyer, JJ Moser, Roman Josi have all stepped up huge to make up for it. They have a sensational goalie in Leonardo Giannoni, who is leading the tournament so far with a .962 save percentage, and Switzerland might be upset watch over Finland in the knockout stage. I just realized I've been saying Slovakia, but it's Czechia. It's Czechia playing. But, yeah. Well, Czechia's been a dark horse. That just has been pretty good. People have been saying that he chokes in big games, but we'll see. Germany was knocked out earlier, but my notes for any team that was knocked out so far would definitely be for Italy. Take a bow, Damien Clara. I said before he was like the only star shining piece of this Italy team. But this goalie, he was faced with 146 shots in the entire tournament and saved the majority of them. But obviously when your defense isn't helping you out and the other team's offense is just chucking you with shots, I mean, he scared the hell out of the Swedes in their prelim game. They only scored 5. The Swedes only won 5-2, and that's a team that was supposed to be fighting for the gold medal. I mean, Anaheim really should just call him up after this tournament because he's ready. He's played the big leagues. He faced so many different shots, and he had amazing save percentage in them. Again, let in a lot of goals, but that's just because what are you supposed to do when you get faced with that much volume? Absolutely incredible by the prospect there, and just, you love to see that. And it's good to see a guy like that who's just so young. He's so up and coming. It's just amazing. Just amazing to see. Rolling right along, let's go with the Phanatic segment. Again, weird spot right now in Philly sports. We actually only really have segments for the Flyers and Eagles. So let's talk about it. To discuss the Flyers, what we can really do with just, Olympic freeze going on, let's talk about the performances of the Flyers that are actually in the Olympic Games. For Finland, we have the defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen, who has a +8, who's actually tied for the Olympic lead in that stat of plus-minus. He had 2 assists in the destruction of Italy, and overall he's had heavy minutes on ice as a defenseman for Finland. So he's definitely looking to grab that medal for his home country. Travis Sanheim, a defenseman for Canada, who's only really played because Josh Morrissey was injured. So Sanheim was brought up on that bottom line, on that bottom pairing for defenseman for Canada. He's been a +5 in his game so far. He's been dependable, but Morrissey is set to return, so Sanheim might be bumped out. So it might be the end of that. Dan Vladar for Czechia. Lukas Dostal has been the main goalie for the Czech, but he lost the first 2 games, and Vladar has only had the 1 game and win versus France, but unfortunately saw a 3-goal run by France that was unanswered. So, up and down play from Czechia overall, especially from Vladar, but I feel like he's been impressing more than Dostal has in the tournament. For the Eagles, just to round out the Phanatic segment, there's the A.J. Brown trade. Prospect, and the Eagles said they're not interested in doing that. And I just think this whole AJ drama is just so winding and it's just so stupid overall. CBS Sports said that the options are bring him to the Bills for a pick, the Patriots for picks, the Chargers, Broncos, Ravens for picks, and it's just like, I've been hearing this Patriots link just because of the Vrabel connection. And there wasn't a true number 1 receiver for the Patriots in the playoffs, which might have been a huge loss for them. Along with the Bills, Allen needed work from his receivers and his offense to actually, take advantage of the lack of Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. But, overall, I still don't see why this is such a big deal that we're going to try to get rid of A.J. Brown. I don't think we need to. I know it's really just the propaganda from the Philly sports media trying to make up these fake things about A.J. Brown and how he's unhappy with the team, that he doesn't like Jalen Hurts, that they won number one. They need a story to keep going in the offseason here. And, I mean, there's so many good wide receiver choices in free agency. I mean, Romeo Doubs is going to be expensive, but if you can grab him as number 3 guy, maybe Tutu Atwell, grab him as number 3 guy. But I just don't think that you need to get rid of A.J. Brown. He's a reliable player. I know that he certainly made me angry in the playoffs and certainly made me angry over the season just with the antics, but I think that it would be a big loss if you get rid of A.J. Brown. I don't think there's actually any true reason to get rid of him. I don't think there's actually any true story behind that. I think that it's all just make-believe to try to, he's a guy who he likes to win. He wants to be, not even likes to win, he wants to get his stats. With, a better offensive coordinator, fingers crossed, we're going to see him actually be able to do more routes than just the curl. We're going to see him actually do routes into the middle of the field. He's going to be a lot more dynamic. I think maybe if it doesn't work with Mannion, if the whole media stories that we get out of him, if they don't work, then maybe, maybe we move on from him. But I think to get rid of such a skilled player like this and just ship him to the Bills, ship him to the Patriots, and just let them win a championship with him would just be so absurd. And I think we're smarter than that. I really don't have any Sixers talk just because it was the All-Star game and there's not really a lot going on in the season right now for them. But so that would be the Phanatic segment. Again, sorry it's not a lot. It's just a weird time in sports because it's right after the Super Bowl. Right now, there's NHL and NBA are both on break. MLB is not really starting up just yet. Spring training hasn't even begun to think about starting up yet. And that free agency is already pretty much all and over. So nothing much to cover on that front. So to finish out this pod, which is definitely going to be a shorter one overall, just because of it's more just me rambling about Kevin Durant and the NBA. We'll finish it out with the Clemson Corner with 2 big deal stories, which would be to start out Clemson basketball loss past week versus Virginia Tech and Duke. They had a rough slide and stretch for the Tigers. Began with an unexpected loss, an expected loss per Griffin Barfield. Thank you for your analysis before the Virginia Tech game, saying that teams usually lose when they come back home after a California road trip. So this was an expected loss in my book. The guard play just overall has been frustrating, and this began especially with leaders Dylan Hunter and Justin Porter combining for 6 points. The team overall had a low in free throw percentage on the season with 61% against the Hokies. Also, not to mention that Virginia Tech just had our number the whole time. They were just on fire from 3. They just kept going up and up in the score. So now Duke and Clemson, which was probably the game of the week last week, it wasn't a very ugly game. It was a very ugly game from both sides, but Clemson still somehow played it tight. They capitalized off Duke errors. They forced Duke to actually keep it possession by possession, which was supposed to be a key of the game in that first half. But they missed everything shot-wise to begin the second half. Their grit couldn't really make up for things. So they ended up getting killed in the numbers in that Duke game, and just it was an ugly loss. It was an ugly watch. I was in the press box covering Clemson baseball, which we'll get into in a minute. And we were watching it briefly while the game was going on, and we're just like, all right, let's turn this game off because it's just not going well. And this is, it's just not a good look for the Tigers, and it's going to be a slide. So the Tigers are out of the AP poll. They're still number 24 on the coaches poll, I believe. So I think they were like number 26, basically. But I mean, it's hard to lose. I mean, again, they still have some good opportunities coming up with Wake Forest, Louisville, and North Carolina to end the season out. And I mean, despite that and falling out of the poll, they're still number 31 on the net. They really lack bad losses, quote unquote, stat-wise, because they've won against the guys they should be winning against, and they've lost to the guys that they, on paper, should be losing against. KenPom-wise, the Tigers are number 34. with sharp differences in their defensive grit, which is 15th in the nation, and they had just their lackluster offense all around, which is number 73 in the nation. They were noted as like a safe number 5, number 6 seed in the tournament, but if this skid continues and they lose another game or two in the remainder of their schedule, they might be sitting at a number 7, number 8 seeding spot, and they could end up facing a difficult round of 32 matchup. Right now, their resume, in my opinion, I mean, they're definitely a tournament team. Again, they have the wins to prove it. They have the losses that just show that they're not there to be a champion, but they're there to compete. And the grit could be there, but I don't know. It's one of those things where like the offense just isn't really firing on their cylinders, that I'm not sure if we're going to be another McNeese State upset to start out the tournament. It's just scary in Tiger Town for basketball, but the team is still great. Brad Brunell said that the team is not as dynamic as his other teams were, but overall, this is just going to be, a test to see if these guys really do have grit, which they've proven they do, but we need the guard play to step up. We need Justin Porter, Dylan Hunter to actually be leaders on this team. Ace Buckner can't just do it all by himself on the backcourt, and there's a lot of worry going on within the basketball realm of Clemson, but it's baseball season. So the good thing to note for Clemson Athletics recently would be their opening series for Clemson baseball, which I was at all 3 games, which I went to the first one as a fan, and I covered the doubleheader on Saturday in the press box. Very, 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 very long day, but very fun to kind of see the behind the scenes of everything and to hear the coach briefly after the game. So pretty cool. They shut out Army in the doubleheader on Saturday, which Brian Hennessy noted was the first time that Clemson had a doubleheader with 2 shutout wins since 2001, which is pretty incredible. And my keys, I wrote an article about the opening series, but the keys to this success was Nate Savoie. He had 8 hits overall, had a game-winning double, a home run, 7 RBIs in this opening series altogether. And just this Tigers team, they had to capitalize off their infield errors to start the series, but I mean, their defense just looked sharp in the last 2 Army games, just looked amazing, and man, just the pitching depth looks just so incredible for the Tigers. There's just no wrong choice on mound. Aiden Kanak had a shaky game, but he's going to be an All-American. Was still pretty good, and Dylan Harrison, the true freshman, came in, excelled in his collegiate debut. Tennessee transfer Michael Sharman had himself just an amazing game. I was sitting there in the press box thinking, hey, if this game gets shortened because we win, we might be seeing a perfect game. He was perfect through 5.2 until there was like an error and then a bloop single in that end of that 6th inning. But just an incredible game from Michael Sharman. We got to hear from him after the game and just kind of hear what his mentality was like and just hear about all of that, which was just pretty incredible, honestly, all around. And he just had an amazing game. And it just really goes to show that, even Justin Legurnick, reliever, he's a guy that doesn't really have a good track record in college so far. I think he has like an 8.5 ERA in his career so far. But he had an amazing reliever appearance in that 3rd game, and he actually earned the win. He made sure that shutout continued. So, just incredible. And the outfield looks sharp. When Savoie's out there, Bryce Clavin just looked incredible. He had those back-to-back diving catches, which were just highlight reel. It just kind of showed that we have some excitement here in Clemson baseball. Cam Cannarella, his spirit lives on in Clavin. So the Clemson, after that opening series, they held on to the number 19 spot in the coaches poll, and they're number 19, I believe, in the D1 baseball poll as well. And they were moved down after being number 17, if I recall right. And I didn't write about it in the notes, but they just blew out Charlotte in the game last night, or the game yesterday, and Jacob Durrell had a grand slam, which is pretty cool to hear and pretty cool to see. So, just overall, Clemson baseball, if there's nothing to be excited about right now with basketball kind of going on the decline, football, you don't really know what's going to happen next year, you can definitely be excited overall for Clemson baseball. They're going to be competing to go to Omaha this year. So, lots of good stuff, and it makes me excited to watch some baseball this year. So, yeah. But overall, that was this week in sports. Again, I'm your host, Calvin Lymper. Thank you all for watching week to week and supporting me. And this has just been so much fun overall to deliver this podcast to all of you. I'm having a lot of fun with it, a lot of fun with my different opportunities that I have. This weekend's going to be a busy one for Clemson Athletics. I'll be helping out with Clemson Video for gymnastics, the baseball game on Saturday, and women's basketball, I believe. So it's going to be the busiest weekend in Clemson sports of this year. So tune in on the Clemson Sports app, wherever you get your Clemson media. Tune in to see what happens, see how our teams do. But I know this is a shorter one. I'm sorry about that to everyone that likes to hear me talk. But to close out this pod, the usual shout-outs. Go Tigers, of course, first and foremost. Go Birds. Go Flyers. Go Flyers that are in the Olympics still. Go Sixers whenever they come back from All-Star break. And soon, go Phillies. Thank you all for watching.